Americans are following their hearts to destruction and emptiness. A sobering conclusion to a brand new study is that it appears America is on the precipice of Christian invisibility, especially young people. The new study from the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University reveals the 5 core beliefs that are rejected by 8 to 12-year-olds are the Bible, absolute truth, means to salvation, the purpose of life, and success. Director of Research Dr. George Barna states, children are following in the unfortunate spiritual footsteps of the generations that have preceded them. And this trajectory leads to the total abandonment of biblical Christianity in record numbers. I'm David Fiorazzo, and this is Christ and Culture. In a discussion about a strong biblical faith in God and His Word, a recent guest I've spoken to on Worldview Matters podcast profoundly stated that you cannot give away what you do not possess. Research continues to show a decreasing percentage of Americans embracing the biblical worldview, including only 2% of parents of young children today. So what then are they teaching or modeling for their children? You ask? Well, secularism, moral relativism, atheism, religious pluralism. Sadly, since God has basically been removed from our culture and government, how can the nation remain truly free and maintain individual rights? Author and Washington Times editor Cheryl Chumley commented on this new research due to the fact that our rights and liberties come from God, and government serves only to protect those individual freedoms and rights. She concludes from the study that by removing God, America will get, quote, government granted, government dispersed, government redistributed, and government of Marxism and communism. Chumley adds, quote, without a biblical worldview, we become subject to the ever-changing human definitions of right and wrong, good and bad, moral and immoral. Mob rule becomes the governing force. Those with the loudest voice, biggest platforms, most powerful or powerfully persuasive means of imposing will are the dictators of law and order. Only 21% of children between 8 and 12 believe the concept of truth and moral absolutes. And they do not see the Bible as a help to determine right and wrong. It makes sense, though, when you think about it. When we understand only 60% of these children have ever even read a part of the Bible. So our founding fathers, as well as our great-grandparents, would be dismayed and horrified about this. What about us? What are we to think about today's high-tech, culture-driven, social media society and its effect on kids, regardless of whether or not they have true Christian parents? It breeds narcissism and an unhealthy focus on self. The Bible warns about being, quote, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Sarah Holliday at the Washington Stand also weighed in on the new study from a different angle. She points out the sad reality that the mental health of today's teenagers has worsened and believes it is a logical result of a world turning away from Christ. Now, I agree with her that social media feeds into depression, anxiety, and confusion. Yes, it is a powerful tool that can be used for good, but we see too much carnage resulting from the evil, which more easily prevails. Holliday calls it a teen mental health crisis, noting the drastic, deceptive change in culture, which is, quote, a recipe for despair, hopelessness, nihilism, disaffection, end quote. She explains why today's kids feel so lost and often angry. She said, quote, young people now are growing up in a society that believes men can become women and vice versa. They are being raised to believe that marriage has nothing to do with God and that sex, specifically outside of marriage, has no consequences. Truth is subjective, and children can carve out their own reality as they enter adulthood. This is detrimental for physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, end quote. So, Children are growing up in a broken, divisive world, that's for sure. Young people are desperately trying to find their identity and make sense of this crazy life, but with no spiritual foundation. They are bombarded and surrounded by bad actors, demonic influencers, lies, and seductive philosophies being promoted as good. Now, we're seeing the highest rates of biblical illiteracy and the lowest rates of the biblical worldview in America, which leads to disorder, destruction, and death. Now, this doesn't seem to give us a lot of hope or optimism for future generations. So, Christians, friends, true believers in Jesus Christ and His truth must be aware of the increasing ministry opportunities around us at a time when more people are seeking answers. They're confused. They're struggling to find hope, and they may be open to the good news of the gospel. I was just reading in 2 Corinthians, and I was reminded of a few powerful verses for us. In verse 17, it says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creature. The old things passed away. Behold, new things have come." And verse 20 says, "Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were making an appeal through us. We beg you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God." So we are messengers of reconciliation, preachers of truth to a culture that needs some good news about a God who loves them and forgives sin. In Him we still trust. Jesus is the answer, friends. God bless you, and keep speaking the truth about things that matter.